Thank you for reminding me, Steve. Okay, now recording, text two, take two. We're going to try this again. Okay, what miracle was instituted to commemorate? So, in other words, there's something curious here. There's a very curious omission from the Talmud, because we know historically, we know from the rabbis, this didn't come from any alien place. We know that there was a miracle. We actually know from our prayers. We know that there was a miracle in our victory, in our war victory. It was something very special. We see it as divine intervention. So when the rabbis are asking the question, what is Hanukkah? And what miracle is instituted to commemorate? Why don't you mention the war? If you think about it, you had people who were not nice. They're in control of Israel. They're trying, at this point in history, trying to stamp out Jewish belief. That's a big deal. Now, it's really nice about the menorah, but as far as the continuity of the Jewish people, winning the war was more important. In the global context of history, winning the war was really important. That it was our survival. We're happy the menorah was lit. But you know something? The menorah hasn't been lit for 2,000 years. It's really about our survival. So it's like, why do the rabbis focus everything on the lighting of the menorah? And here, if you look in text 3, this is working. Okay. Which is the bottom of 165 from the second Lubavitcher Rebbe. He says, logically, it seems that the military victory of the many into the hands of the few and strong into the hands of the weak was the primary victory. And the miracle of oil should be secondary to it. But Hanukkah, we observe, went on the 25th of Kislev. That was Friday, Thursday night, Friday. What does that commemorate? When the miracle of the oil occurred. Not on the 24th. Thursday was Erev Hanukkah. It was no special holiday. That is the day that the military victory took place. Why do we give primacy to the seemingly secondary miracle and relegate the seemingly primary miracle to secondary status? So this is a fundamental question, trying to get to how did the rabbis see the character of Hanukkah? What are we celebrating on Hanukkah? Oh, we're celebrating two miracles, but what's the primary thrust, the take home? So if we go to text, we're gonna go into the next text. The rabbis see this, the war of Hanukkah, as primarily an ideological war. The Nazis didn't like Judaism, but they hated Jews. So if a person was religious, not religious, so it wasn't about, okay, if you don't keep kosher, we'll let you. They didn't like who you came from. They hated their being. I think that our enemies today in the Middle East is the same thing. It's not about religion. It's not even about land. It's hatred for our people. And it's been like that for us many times over the millennia. In the Hanukkah story, it was ideological. If we drill down into the story, and don't have that much here, Hellenism, the Hellenists were a progressive group of people. They were progressive in that Alexander the Great, who was Hellenist, when he came to Israel, it was great. They loved him. Alexander became a Jewish name because he was permissive. He allowed for them to have freedoms. That was not normal in the ancient world. So the progressivism was very welcome until progressivism became twisted, where it became not only do we feel that you should have liberty to be who you are, we feel that we have to help you liberate yourself from things we don't like about you. So when they said, when the Hellenists came, the Hellenists didn't try to kill the Jews. They said, let's just get past the hocus pocus. We're getting into a new era. We're getting out of the darkness of the ancient times. So therefore, from what I've read of Hellenism, much of Hellenism believed in God, but they took from all streams of religion. They didn't define it as much. It was a personal agnosticism, I think they called it, where that it was very much on personal determining of morals and of a path to godliness. So having something very fixed and very faith-focused like Judaism ran against the grain. And things where the Greeks were into the beauty of the human body. So the idea of what they called mutilating a body by giving a bris, that was crazy. So first they tried with, in their cafes and salons, tried to convince the Jews that we're doing really well here. We love you, you love us. We got to drop the bris. It's silly. Some Jews actually wanted that. There was a significant group of Jews who became Hellenized, because who doesn't like a liberal progressive way of looking at the world? And therefore, they stopped with the bris. The Talmud tells us there was a cottage industry in trying to do something to reattach foreskins because it was embarrassing.
Well, there was more to it than that, though.
You make a couple bucks.
There was more to it than that, and that is, if you were circumcised, you could not be a citizen of the Hellenic society.
That's a great. I did not know. That's a great point. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I hadn't known that. What Eric is saying, that if you were circumcised, you couldn't be a citizen of the Hellenic society. I didn't know that, but it deepens the point. But even Shabbos, a day of rest. Even in Egypt, they believe in day of rest. But they didn't like that it has with all the strictures. Who says it has to be Saturday? And who says it every week? You decide. So they were trying to get at our ideological, our faith underpinnings. And they were successful. They got traction in some of the Jewish community. So there was a civil war within the Jews. That also was the Jews who wanted to remain loyal to Jewish tradition were battling not just the Hellenists. They were Hellenists, Hellenized Goyim, Hellenist non-Jews with Lahavdil Hellenist Jews. So let's take a look at 4a. No. Okay, I'm sorry. 166. The Torah states, and you shall guard all my decrees, which in Hebrew is chukim, and all my judgments, which in Hebrew is mishpatim. I don't know, you don't really need to know the Hebrew words, and perform them. Our sages commented, this adjures us to guard and perform both the chukim and the mishpatim, both types of mitzvahs. Roughly speaking, there are two different types of mitzvahs, and they're referred to in these two different ways. What we're going to call decrees or judgments. There are mitzvahs that make rational sense, and there are those that are super rational. So, for example, even the idea of a mezuzah, oneness of God, oneness of purpose, putting out in the entrance to a room, I can explain that. I don't need some suspension of critical thinking. It makes sense. What if someone says, I don't believe in God, but I like that idea? I can totally see that. I wouldn't be shocked. Kosher? What's the reason for kosher? It's not about health. The Torah just says do it. Now, if there are health benefits, that's great. And that would be nice if God did that. It helps us out in our program. But there's no reason given. There are other things where there's just we don't know exactly what that is. The ritual purity and impurity. That's a super rational thing. So the meaning of performing is well known. One should observe the chukim. Guarding means to treat them with caution and not think they're any less than mishpatim. So what this Maimonides here is telling us is that we should be careful as individuals and as a Jewish society not to see the super rational mitzvahs as less important than the rational mitzvahs, because they're going to help a poor person working in a soup kitchen, going to protect Israel and pick oranges or figs. All makes perfect sense. You decide for yourself you're going to do it. Then there are things which I don't know. There's certain things where it's not a rational thing. So if it's a rational thing, my grandparents did it, Jews have been doing it, but then you got to work with it. But it's not the same as something which your mind and your psyche totally buys into. So to take this further, the mishpatim, in other words, the rational mitzvahs, are those mitzvahs whose motivating rationale is openly revealed and the benefit of their observance in this world is known. Let's say a prohibition against robbery and bloodshed. First, you say, tell someone, don't hit. They tell the kid, don't. They should be able to understand. It hurts. They'll understand. We don't kill. You don't hurt someone. Our normal, a human moral compass should guide us in that direction. Tell someone, don't eat bacon. Why should I eat bacon? Oh, because 3,300 years ago we got something. It's not an instinctive thing. Or the commandment to honor one's parents. So okay, my parents, of course, they birthed me, they paid my tuition, all that stuff. So it makes more sense. But the chukim are mitzvahs whose motivating rationales are not known. Our sages said, I ordained decrees, and you have no license to question. So that, especially in America, in a society like America, or even in ancient Greece, to say, why don't I want to question? Let me question. And if I can't question you, I'm not sure I want to deal with this. Give me an answer. I'll keep the mitzvah. Yeah.
I'm reading a book with Richard Sapolsky. He writes about free will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all these books, they teach you not free will, but free will. The more you learn how not to do something, the more you structure your reality. And that you get control of your life.
That's very interesting. That's a very profound insight. It's a very profound insight. We have to unpack that. That's not. I think that's going to be too profound for this conversation. But I don't know if everybody heard online. Free will and free want. Yeah, it's very. I think that's a profound thought. I think along those lines, the idea of the chukim, the idea is, I don't get to do everything I want. There are guardrails, and even if I don't understand them, it's healthy.
Even if you develop the free will, actually, the neurosurgeon might agree, right? I don't know if you would have won. It actually changes the structure of your brain.
I could.
He's a neuroanatomist.
So it makes sense to me. I'm not qualified, but there's a beauty to it. I know, just as a bystander to the science of it. I remember years and years ago, I was with someone who's a psychologist, and one of my kids, I can't remember which one, was 3, 4 years old, and somehow either this guy gave him a candy, I can't remember if it was a boy or a girl, but one of my children gave a candy. He had a candy, and he came up to me and said he wants to eat it. And I looked at it and I said, this is kosher. This isn't kosher. I'll give you a candy at home. And he took it. The kid, okay. So this psychologist said, that's amazing. Kid has a candy. He wants a candy. You told him 2 words, 3 words, it's not kosher, and that's okay. He accepted it. He said, that's great. That's great training. To know there's some things are off. We just don't do this, which I think is in. Yeah, it's in
by childhood.
Sapolsky. I think I've heard about his.
He's very famous.
Yeah, but he doesn't believe there is free will.
No, there is no free will because it's complicated.
That's not a Torah perspective.
No, you would agree if you're ready. See what he.
Yeah,
he doesn't believe in free will.
Yeah, so I'd like to read it actually. I've heard about it. Okay. So now 4b for Maimonides. A person's natural inclination confronts them concerning the chukim, which are the super-rational, and the nations of the world challenge them as well. Going and say, what are you doing? For example, prohibition of the meat of a pig milk and meat, the calf whose neck is broken, which is not about food, the red heifer, the goat that was sent out into the wilderness on Yom Kippur. We don't have explanations for them. To what degree did King David suffer because of the heretics and the idolaters who would issue challenges concerning the decrees? Back to King David, we suffered. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you giving us this hocus pocus? As long as they would pursue him with false retorts, that they would arrange according to humanity's limited knowledge, he would increase his clinging to the Torah. King David, good morning, Dr. Carlos. He wasn't intimidated by them. The more they attacked him, he held on to his Torah values. As the verse states, willful transgressors have stacked falsehoods against me, but I guard your precepts with a full heart. So now, I'm going to go to text 5 from the previous Lubavitch Shidduch, which takes from Maimonides. Now let's go what the Greeks. Now that we understand this idea of a super rational dimension, which is foundational to Torah, where did the Greeks come in? The Greeks' war was a spiritual one, and was not it was a physical war, but the physical war was just a manifestation of the spiritual one. If the Jews would have said, "Okay, as long as you're letting us remain Jewish, I can keep my a seder. We can, we can have whatever it is that the nostalgia we have and some of the mitzvahs that they allow." Okay, I could absolutely see wise rabbis getting together at that time saying, maybe we should just go along with it until things blow over, until we have more, a better rapport with the ruling people. Protecting life is a value. So should I go and circumcise a child at the risk of us getting killed? The child is eventually he can be circumcised, but maybe when the tide turns, it's not an irrational calculation. But they didn't take that calculation because they saw this was a spiritual war against the foundation of Judaism. They did not wish to physically harm the Jews. Rather, their primary objective was to make them forget that the Torah is God's Torah. The mitzvahs are His will. There's in the liturgy we say on Hanukkah. I said here this morning. We say God. They wanted to take us away from your Torah and your mitzvahs. Who else's Torah and mitzvahs are they? The idea is that Torah, studying Torah, it wasn't forbidden necessarily. If you're studying the brilliance of Jewish banking law, or Jewish ethics, they say we love this stuff, but leave God out of it. We can sit here, we can have a seminar all day on Torah finance laws, our Torah perspective on biology and medicine, and not have to mention God, and that's great. So as you say, "Oh, God, give it," then you're going beyond our progressive area of comfort, because it's something we can control. Meaning, they did not have a problem with the Torah insofar as it is intellectual exercise. To be sure, the Greeks were highly sophisticated people and recognized the brilliance of the Torah. However, they opposed the notion that it was God's Torah, holy Torah. Against this, they battled.
I believe the central issue there is the commandment that says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." In other words, their premise was that all the gods were equal.
No, we're not allowed to have gods before you, after you, on top of you, under you. We don't have other gods.
I know we don't.
No, so it was that. I mean, I'm sure that wasn't a great part of it. I think the point of it was that from this insight into it is that they wanted everything rationalized, and they didn't want to accept something that's beyond rational. You can look at something. I was mentioning in Shul yesterday. You can have smart people look at something which everybody should agree is immoral? And the answer is no. First, we have to contextualize it. Because when you contextualize, we get to see it this way, that way, and then, but then somebody say it's not about contextualizing. It's not about understanding all sides of things. What I'm seeing in front of me is immoral, and it has to be called for what it is, right? Like calling for the genocide of Jews. Not a question of different debates and contexts. That's wrong. Period. So we're going to go now to text 6. The Jews at that time were not subjugated to a ruler who wanted to annihilate them, like they were in the times of him. Rather, the Greeks, led by the ruler Antiochus, only wanted the Jews' subservience and devotion to their culture and faith system. Just like any conquering nation subjugates those they vanquish to their beliefs and faith. If the Jews would have accepted the Greek sovereignty, adopted their beliefs, and agreed to pay them taxes, that was the only thing that Alexander the Great wanted, was taxes. But he then let them do whatever they want, which was unbelievable for that ancient times. The Greeks would not have asked for more. He didn't try to tinker with their religion after he passed away. Obviously there was, but we could have gone along. In Purim times, we really, it seems like we wouldn't have had a choice. Certainly not under the Nazis. They didn't care how observant you were. So now, let's take a look at something. You may be familiar with the song Ma'os Tzur, which is a commonly sung through the Jewish community after the lighting of the menorah. There are words there, stanza there. Text 7. The Greeks gathered against me in the days of the Hasmoneans. They broke down the walls of my towers, which was where it was, in Jerusalem or even outside the temple, and defiled all the oils. What they did was they said, we want you to light the menorah. Menorah's fine. Spreading light to the world, Greeks love that. Candles, it's a very spiritual thing. And they were into spirituality. But they said, just leave out the hocus pocus of your grandparents. It's oil, it's gonna work. I'm gonna take off the seal. Watch, it still works. So if you're going by a purely rational and experiential litmus test of what to believe, you say, it's true, it works. The question is setting up the expectations. There are things we can't see. Remember someone telling me, an old lady, she since passed away. She said, I grew up Orthodox, and my parents told me that if I ever ate treif, I would get struck by lightning. She says, and I was dating someone, and he convinced me to try. I was so scared. I ate it. I didn't get struck by lightning. So it was so liberating. Is that I realized that. So I'm sure the parents meant well, but it's a terrible thing to say, because who said, where did you ever pick up you can get struck by lightning? You said if the expectations are wrong, you say that keeping the Torah is going to make everything go well, and not keeping Torah is going to make everything go wrong. We're not told that. We hope God takes care of us, and we have trust that God takes care of us. But doing a mitzvah is about connecting with God. Doing a mitzvah doesn't mean that the stocks in your 401k are going to take a jump because you put on tefillin. There's no. I hope they do, but there's no promise like that. And there's no promise that by eating non-kosher or doing something wrong ritually, that all of a sudden something bad is going to happen to you. No. That's not what the Torah tells us. So the words are very precise. They defiled all the oils, and as I saw from the rabbis of the Talmud, they defiled the oils, meaning they wanted to be able to show the Jews that they could have their spirituality, but without God, necessarily, or without the God of Israel. And if you look at text 8, The menorah served as testimony to humankind that the divine presence rests among Israel. Oh, I'm sorry. The light, the spiritual connection with God, was very important to us. It's not just about light. It's about what the light represents. Of course, you can have light. I can steal oil. I can murder someone and steal their oil and light it, and it'll still have seemingly the same light. Use that in a menorah. Does that have any connection with God, with goodness, with holiness? Of course not. It's not only about the physical manifestation. It's about what it represents, because our relationship with God is not a tangible one. Like love for a loved one. It's not tangible. You have tangible representations of it. You have to find tangible ways to express it. But the love itself, you can't touch it. The faith, you can't touch. The flame of the menorah it's a physical flame, but it's part of our physical world. But because it is also somewhat detached from the physical, it's not so graspable, so to speak. It was a representation of our very sublime and sometimes abstract connection with God. It testifies to it. So, looking at that, look at in text 9, the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, he says the Greeks wanted to make the Jews forget about the divine aspect of the Torah. They didn't want to harm them physically. Therefore, they deliberately contaminated the oil in the temple. For the oil represents the divine light of the Torah. Consequently, the miracle of the oil, which was the answer to the Greeks' primary scheme, is the primary miracle of Hanukkah. And the military victory, the answer to the physical conflict that the Greeks never intended, is secondary to it. Ultimately, what perseveres and is the spirituality. Of course, we're souls and bodies. There's a real world. We're not supposed to ignore it. We can't ignore it. But as people get older, what do we recognize? That a lot of the physical things, the material things that enchanted us in the 20s and 30s, you see, some of it was fun for the feeble-minded. What is the relationships, the goodness. Ultimately that's the durability of it. So while the war was for our physical survival, that's true, it was an important war. The fact is that our spiritual survival is really where it's all about. And the idea that we in Hanukkah, we fought to be able to for the right to be spiritually connected to God. That's really important stuff. And the Hasmoneans, and they don't have it here, when they came into the temple, and they've just been victorious the day before, they want to demonstrate that they've retaken the temple, and they want to show it to the world, and the lighting the menorah is a symbol of that. They didn't have the holy oil, pure oil. By Torah law, they were actually allowed to use the defiled oil. In Jewish law, the law of defilement is suspended for public welfare. So if they would ask a rabbi at that time, say, we want to light the menorah, we can't find any of the holy oil, all we've got is that oil, and they took off the seals, can we use it? Rabbi would have had to say by Jewish law, yes. And maybe would have even said, do it. It's public welfare to everyone to see the menorah lit. They were determined to find pure oil, because that's what we fought for. We fought for the idea of ritual purity. We fought for the ethereal and things you can, the invisible holiness we don't see, and we fought for the right to believe in it. We're not going to just cave in and use their oil, even if it's only for a few days until we get new oil. And that is part of their determination, was a big part of this miracle, because they had a commitment to not just surviving as Jews, surviving as believing Jews. And if we believe there's such a thing as purity, we're gonna just keep on looking till we find something. Let's oops, what did I just do? Sorry, that was a mistake. I'll get this back up. Okay. Now, for this reason, we have in 10. We have, I mentioned before that in the Talmud, it only mentions the spirituality, and we just built up the spirituality. But the fact is, we can't ignore the war. Physical war was important. The only way our spiritual connection was protected was through a physical war. Physical war is important. We should be protecting and praying for the IDF. We need that. We need like real bullets, unfortunately. We need real soldiers on the ground, and that's protecting our spirituality. So why does it seem to be ignored? And as a matter of fact, in our services, every 3 times a day over Hanukkah, we recite something here, which totally focuses on the war and doesn't even talk at all about the menorah, the spiritual miracle. We say these words: "You in your abundant mercy, and you, God, stood by the Hasmoneans in a time of distress. You defended their cause, you judged their grievances, you avenged them. You delivered the mighty into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few, the defiled people into the hands of the undefiled, the wicked into the hands of the righteous, insolent sinners into the hands of the diligent students of your Torah. And you made yourself a great and sanctified name in your world. And your people Israel, for your people Israel, you performed a great deliverance and redemption unto this very day." So now we have, it's very lopsided. The Talmud seems to talk only about the light, the spiritual miracle, and the liturgy talks about the war, doesn't mention it at all. So what are they thinking? So here there's something from an insight from the Rebbe, text 11. You stand back, then when you compare the great spiritual revelation of Hanukkah, which was expressed through the miracle of the oil, physical military victory becomes insignificant. Okay, it was important, but in the scope of history, it's that we were able to remain Jews and believing Jews. Therefore, when we wish to commemorate and offer thanks for the physical victory, we don't simultaneously mention the miracle of the oil, because it would outshine the physical victory to the extent that it would become negligible. Therefore, we commemorate the 2 miracles at 2 different times. We commemorate the miracle of the oil by lighting Hanukkah candles, and we commemorate the military victory with the Alval and Issachar. What the Rebbe was saying is that it doesn't really seem to make sense that the rabbis of the Talmud focus only on one, and then that same group of rabbis structure the liturgy which focuses solely on the other one. And what the Rebbe was saying was that we want to thank God for the war. We want to thank God for the kindnesses that God shows us in the material world. But if you mix it together in the whole story, something that of holiness magnitude, of divine magnitude, of spiritual magnitude, is going to push the physical victory to the back burner. And therefore they said, let's separate the 2. We'll have, when we light the menorah, we'll remember the miracle of the lights, and when we're praying to God, and we're praying to God for our physical needs, we'll recall how God helped us in that physically in that period of time. Text 12. So if you look about this, spiritual is going to be dominant, because everything spiritual is compared to light, because the spiritual realm is entirely removed from physicality. Thus, everything that exists in the spiritual realm is analogous to light. This is from the previous letter. Light is a metaphor for godliness. A matter of fact, even Torah mitzvahs in the scripture, it says a mitzvah is like a lamp, and the Torah is light. We use that metaphor. I'll tell you something else. When one studies Torah, his light draws him to the right path. This is from the Medrash. Was a very interesting thing that the rabbis taught us, that in what we're studying right now, there's godliness. There's God. When God speaks to the Jews at Mount Sinai and introduces himself, so to speak, his first word is Anochi, I am God who took you out of Egypt. The Talmud tells us Anochi is an acronym for 4 words, which mean I invested my soul into this document. God's. So in Torah, at its core, it's godliness. So what the Medrash is telling us, that if we sit here for an hour and we study banking law and we don't mention God, we've just digested God, whether we know it or not. And that itself has a often subconscious impact on us because we study Torah. And Torah, when we study Torah, its light draws us to the right path, even if we're not thinking about a God there. It says the luminary within it. There's the luminary and the light. And the light is what we see. But the luminary is something where the sunlight's coming through the window. That's one thing. Looking at the sun, it's not going to be healthy. But you don't spend their time looking at the sun. The luminary it can be more distant. And here in this case, it's not. We don't see it. We have the conceptual, the Torah, the light of Torah. But we don't recognize, we don't see and understand that we're absorbing the essence of God, the essence of the light. That is something which we always have access to. Not only Hanukkah. We always have access to Jewish spirituality, Torah, to God, to relationship with God. God is always waiting for us to open up to God. We always have the opportunity to do something meaningful and connect with our souls and with God and bring light to the world that way. So here's a letter from the Rebbe, text 15. This is from 1977. By the grace of, this is written to what we call prisoners, Jewish prisoners. By the grace of God, all white collar. 15th of Kislev, just kidding. The November 25th, 1977, Brooklyn, New York. To all Jewish detainees everywhere, God be with you, greeting and blessing. In connection with the forthcoming days of Hanukkah, I extend to each and all of you prayerful wishes for a bright and inspiring Hanukkah, coupled with the fulfillment of your heart's desires for good in every respect. Hanukkah brings a meaningful message of encouragement, keeping with all the festivals and commemorative days in our Jewish calendar, which are meant to be observed not just for the sake of remembrance, but also for the practical lessons they provide in our daily life. One of the practical teachings of Hanukkah is as follows. The special mitzvah pertaining to Hanukkah is, of course, the kindling of the Hanukkah lights, which must be lit after sunset. Unlike the Shabbos candles, which must be lit before sunset, and unlike also the lights of the menorah that were kindled in the Beis Hamikdash and the Holy Temple that were kindled even earlier in the day. The meaningful message that this emphasis on kindling the Hanukkah lights after sunset conveys is when a person finds themselves in a situation of after sunset. Which means when the light of day has given way to gloom and darkness, as was the case in those ancient days under the oppressive Greek rule. One must not despair, God forbid, but on the contrary, it is necessary to fortify oneself with complete trust in God, the essence of goodness, and take heart in the firm belief that the darkness is only temporary, and it will soon be superseded by a bright light, which will be seen and felt all the more strongly through the supremacy of light over darkness, by the intensity of the contrast. And this is the meaning of lighting the Hanukkah lights, and in a manner that calls for lighting an additional candle each successive day of Hanukkah, to plainly see for oneself, and to demonstrate to others passing by in the street, that light dispels darkness, and even a little light dispels a great deal of darkness. How much more so a light that steadily grows in intensity? And the physical light has such quality and power, how much more so eternal spiritual light? What has been said above pertains to our Jewish people as a whole, as well as to each individual Jew, man or woman in particular. The conclusion that follows from it, is that though our Jewish people are still in a state of golus, exile, and darkness covers the earth, a time when nations rage and people speak vain things, there is no reason to get overly excited by it. In other words, aggravated. We have only to strengthen our trust in God, the guardian of his people Israel, who neither slumbers nor sleeps, and be confident that he will protect his people wherever they be, and will bless them with hatzlacha, meaning success in all things, and in a growing measure. And they will hasten the coming of our righteous Mashiach to bring us to true redemption, which is fast approaching. Similarly, in regard to each individual, those who find themselves in a state of personal exile, there's no cause for discouragement and despondency, God forbid. On the contrary, one must find increasing strength and complete trust in the Creator and Master of the universe, that their personal deliverance from distress and confinement is on its speedy way. All the more so when this trust is expressed in a growing commitment to the fulfillment of God's will in the daily life and conduct in accordance with his Torah and mitzvahs, of which the mitzvah of kindling the Hanukkah lights is particularly significant in that it symbolizes the illumination of the soul, the lamp of God, with the light of the Torah mitzvahs. As the verse states, for a mitzvah is a lamp and Torah is light. Illuminating it in an increasing measure from day to day to bring about the fulfillment of the prophecy that the people walking in darkness of the exile will see a great light, the light of the redemption, with blessings for success and good tidings in all above, the Rebbe's signature. So this is the Rebbe's idea and Torah's idea about taking the Hanukkah message, the light message, forward with us, that we always have the opportunity, no matter how dark it may feel, opportunity to bring light. We always have a chance for a mitzvah. So let's go to key points, which is on page 178. Story of Hanukkah centers on two miracles, one physical, the other spiritual. A military victory and a jug of oil burning far longer than naturally possible. The Talmud declares that our institutional holiday commemorates only the spiritual miracle. Number two, the Greeks waged a cultural spiritual war against the Jews. They were primarily irked by the Jews' logic-defying commitment to God, not the logical and elegant parts of Judaism. Number three, the spiritual miracle of oil is the ultimate spiritual victory, as opposed to the military one. Number four, at the same time, we make a small mention of the military victory as well. Number five, Torah is light, and so on automatically, even if one is in the darkest place. Exposure to Torah can and eventually will pull them out. So that is, if there are any questions, we can talk about those. Neither wish you all. Oh, 1 second. There's a question here. I missed it. The chat. I hope it wasn't a long time ago. Wow. Let's see if I can get it up here. Respectfully, at least literally, there are places that appear to suggest a severe punishment, not hit by lightning, but nevertheless severe, in my opinion, such as the following. 1 second. For not following mitzvahs. We're going back to that. Okay. Right. So I don't guess I don't have to read it all through, but that there are Torah scriptures which indicate that is true. At the same time, that those the Torah tells us that what God says. I mean, the whole topic of punishment and reward, let's say, is beyond, is larger than this. But I want to at least give you a snapshot. The Torah idea of consequences for our actions are that we experience them as souls when we move on from the body. That goes to both reward and not reward. Same time, what God says is that when you lead a good life, I'm going to be there to help protect you and try to help you through the jungle. And I feel that all the time. It doesn't say that if that means there will be, I mean, the same Torah says, it doesn't say that righteous people won't be murdered. And we talk about there's murder. And we talk that there's abuse and things people suffer. And we know that. So the idea isn't that Torah never gives us the idea that there's a quid pro quo of someone does something wrong, they experience something negative. You're not going to. There isn't that type of idea. Yeah, what the Torah does frame is that generally, if you lead a good life, you'll have good results, and I'll be there with you. And not if someone is abusing drugs, so or they're running with a mafia crowd. It's not about whether they're going to get punished. They're building a life that's going to punish them. So what God has in store for them. I don't know. Who knows about that? But the idea is that we get the example we given is that if I hire a day laborer to paint my house, so I pay them, or even not a day laborer. They're painting my house. It's going to take a week. So the paycheck doesn't come till the end of the week. But meanwhile, I'll serve them lunch. I help them along so they can do their job. So it's this type of thing is part of it is enabling God saying, I'm going to help you out. And so that does, but the Torah doesn't, that's in a much more general sense. And well, it's for us individually, but it's in a much more general sense. The idea of an immediate quid pro quo, good or not good, you don't find in the Torah, and it's not real. It's not real for thousands of years, and that doesn't happen. I believe in God, yes. Do I believe in God rewards us for good? Yes. Do I believe that sometimes if I have a near miss on the road, do I say thank you, God? Yes. Because, and I believe that the goodness we create helps to buffer us from the jungle. Is that enough? Or do I need security outside? We need security outside. Because I have to be smart also, because nowhere does the Torah say, don't worry, you're studying Torah, the Hamas can't get you. I wish. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a great week.
Thank you.
Have a happy Hanukkah.
Very explanatory situation what the last word you are saying right now.